Yeah, sure is.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, Chairman of Accuracy in Academia, and joined by Cheryl Chumley, the online opinion editor for Washington Times. Thank you, Cheryl, for joining me again today. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just trying to get not so lopsided here.
That's always the thing with the cameras. And when if you're doing different shows, sometimes it's just you never know what they're doing, and then you look at yourself and you're like, do I really look like that? I don't know.
Absolutely, especially when you're right up front, your big head on the screen. So it's nice to be with you again.
All right. Well, we've got plenty of news as usual, and it's always hard to choose two or three things to talk about. But we'll start off with Israel, because it is definitely probably some of the hottest news that's going on there. Hamas started firing rockets into Israel, and Israel has retaliated as they should do and have wanted to do. But one of the things about this is that it's become this huge controversy because you've got these far left Democrats that are really pressuring the Biden administration to get Netanyahu to go for a ceasefire, and there seems to be a heck of a lot more anti-Israel sentiment in this administration, or at least in this Congress, than there has been, or maybe they're just more vocal. Kind of give me the rundown here in terms of what you're seeing.
Well, I think the opposition to Israel has always been present, right? There's always been a little bit of undercurrent about the pro-Palestinian movement, the anti-Semites. Even in Congress, there was that whole thing that Nancy Pelosi, was it 2-3 years ago, had to bring forward that agreement to show that they in Congress were in solidarity against forms of discrimination. And it started out as anti-Semitism, but what happened was, as it wound through their committees and so forth, it got watered down to include all forms of discrimination. And that came because of the squad, the very anti-Israel vocal outpourings from these four in Congress. And so what we're seeing now, though, with this anti-Israel sentiment is that it's more opportunistic. We have at this point in time a feckless president in the White House who is easily steamrolled by the far left influences in government, including the anti-Israel influences. So you're seeing these people sensing opportunity to push forward their agenda where they couldn't go anywhere with it under the previous administration. And you're probably seeing a little bit of backlash against the previous administration's so strong pro-Israel stance. For instance, naming Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which sparked massive outcry, but they withstood the pressure and did it anyhow. So I think now you're seeing these elements that would like to see the Palestinian people, the radical terrorist element of the Palestinian people, Hamas, put on some sort of moral equivalency scale with Israel. And with this president, honestly, it could go either way, right? He gives a semi-good talk about Israel's right to defend itself, but that's just speaking the obvious. I mean, that's not really a strong stance. And on the other hand, now he is looking and giving more ear and more platform to the anti-Israel faction in Congress, the squad, again, specifically.
Right. I mean, he went to right. I mean, I guess he was trying to plug infrastructure, but the EVs and everything like that. And it looks like, reports said that he had a pretty heated exchange, I guess, on the tarmac with Rashida Tlaib, and on to praise her. And now he called her Rashid, I think, during the speech at one point. But, I mean, is that what we're going? We have that, and you mentioned, I mean, she's part of the squad, and then we also have and calling Israel, apartheid. I mean, this is just, to me, it's like, this is insane.
It is insane. And just a few hours ago in D.C. at the Israeli embassy, there were mass protests in the streets on behalf of the Palestinian people, on behalf, basically, of Hamas. And putting down the idea that Israel is the aggressor here, or actually elevating the idea that Israel is the aggressor and putting down the notion that Israel has a right to defend itself against true aggressors, which are the terrorists, of course. And, I just think that this is going to be a running theme with this administration, that this White House is going to try and walk policy tightropes by appeasing both pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian / Hamas factions. And it's going to come to a time where America is going to have to, under this president, pick a side.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that, given all this, I mean, that's interesting about that demonstration you mentioned, because Ames' old office, and it goes back to pre-2013 or whatever, was actually was down by on Connecticut by Van Ness. So no, I don't know that. Can you hear that?
Hey, Ken, is that mine or yours?
I'm trying to figure out where the heck is that coming from. All right. This is so funny. All right, I'm going to try this. Maybe that'll. Sometimes, there's things with technology where you have something that's been sitting there for a while, and there's some autoplay feature that finally kicks in like an hour later.
Yeah. Well, look, it could have been more embarrassing, right?
Yeah, you could have been a lot more embarrassing.
Yeah.
I hate those websites that do that, though. It's like, I want to save a story or whatever. I want to go back to it later. But then when I'm doing something else, the next thing I know, there's a video that they have on their site that just starts playing. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going through my tabs. And I'm like, which site was that?
I can kill that back. Fox News is pretty bad about that. If you have Fox News open, you better close it, because they're really bad.
Exactly. Yeah. Not that we want to be overly critical about Fox News, but that website will do that to you every time. Yeah. All right, back to the subject. That was interesting, because we were located not too far away from the embassy. That would have been kind of interesting to see what they were doing down there. But do you think the American people understand that Hamas? I mean, these are terrorists. These are not freedom-loving people that are trying to, they want something really good for Palestine per se. The people there, they are just outright terrorists.
Yeah, I actually think most Americans understand that, right? But where this movement gains steam is with the young people. It gains steam, the BDS movement on college campuses around the nation. The sympathy for the Palestinian people really gains steam among young people. And you can understand why, right? Because when youth, they always want fairness for everybody. It's got to be fair all around. If one person has this, another person should have the same, and so forth. So it really takes off with this youthful movement that, like the Squad capitalizes on. And then it plays into the media, though, as if it's just one person after another, tired of what is pushed forward as the Israeli aggression onto Palestinian people. And so whether it becomes a majority in America or not, the bigger issue here is the perception, and the media certainly falls in line with the pro-Hamas movement. And that's what carries at the end of the day. That's what we hear on our news.
So give me your take on this story that came out about the AP Hamas in the same building and everything like that.
About the what in the same building?
The associated with AP, yeah.
Yeah, I just saw the headlines of that, and I believe I read Benjamin Netanyahu's response that it was sort of dismissive of it. But look, if you're going to embed yourself with terrorists, then you have to recognize and accept the fact that you may be a target for those seeking to shoot and kill and target terrorists. And that's part of what you take on as a journalist. If you are reporting on foreign affairs and you willingly sign up for that sort of duty, you have to recognize that you are in a war zone and act accordingly. And to cry about being hit after the fact and then try and paint something political against Israel because of it. It's unfair to the readers, because you're there to paint a complete picture of what's going on. And sort of when you already are embedded with Hamas, you're siding with the enemy, and you're siding with an enemy that's widely recognized as an enemy in most of America, in most civilized society.
Yeah, and one thing that got me about this was just that the criticism on this just seems to be completely unfair anyway, because the original report, I believe, came out from via the Atlantic, not a conservative publication. This is not some conservative right-wing pro-Israel type of a thing that was going on there, and it seems to have caught the AP people kind of flat-footed trying to figure out how they were going to defend themselves against this. And the Israeli government did what they need to do. I mean, this is they targeted that building, but they told everybody to get out of that building. They wanted that area out, and then they went ahead and then took it down. And I think they had every right to do so. But it just seems that narrative, kind of, as you said, this Israeli aggression. When you're attacked first, you have the right to fight back. And why should Israel cave in and cater to Hamas and give them political talking points or political victory here? Israel needs to stand firm on this, and that's what you mentioned. Biden being a feckless president. I mean, he's definitely carrying the water for, I think, Iran on this. And kind of also another one of these backlashes against the Abraham agreement that that Trump was putting into effect, which is definitely not very popular with certain sectors, particularly with these terrorists. So we have so many things going on over there.
Yeah, we do. And honestly, this is what happens under a Democrat administration, right? Things always heat up in the Middle East. Things always heat up by the elements who have been cowed into silence by a stronger leader in the White House. So just going forward, it's really going to get more heated, I believe, in the Mideast, because the end in sight would have to come with Hamas first off recognizing that Israel has a right to exist, and that Jewish people do not, as they desire, have to be wiped off the face of the earth for peace to prevail. So how do you argue with that? How do you strike a peace deal with people who just want you gone and abolished forever after? You can't. So this is why it's so important to have a strong America government, because it puts at bay hostilities before they can take off and escalate, as we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back on all of this, I mean, a very long career, in politics, and you would think that when it comes to foreign policy, that his experience in the Senate, as vice president, would make him better prepared for what's going on here. But when I look at this now, I say, in reality, Donald Trump, with very little experience, in these areas, did a far better job, even from the get-go, on foreign policy than Joe Biden has done so far and is likely to do.
That's because terrorists don't respect diplomacy, right? They take advantage of it. Terrorists only respect strength, and Donald Trump could have zero, experience with foreign affairs and government policies and politics, but just taking a strong stand for Israel and for America sends the message to these terrorists that, oh, maybe we better second think taking any sort of military action. We'll wait for the Democrat to come into the White House before we do that.
Yeah, I mean, Trump really kind of threw out the playbook on how to handle foreign policy in a lot of ways, and very much to our advantage, I think, in the end.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, it really did. It may not have been the Barack Obama smooth talking way of, diplomacy. It may not be the Joe Biden walk the middle road type of policy, but it certainly did work.
Yeah. All right, on to another subject, Liz Cheney. So Liz Cheney is now out in the House leadership, Republican leadership, but she hasn't gone quietly, I should say, right? She's been on lots of talk shows and whatnot, and seems to she's very strong in her convictions about this. I mean, what's your take about Liz Cheney now that she's out of leadership? What's going on with her? What's her future in the party?
Well, she has deep roots, politically speaking. Her dad, Dick Cheney, and she has lots of establishment backing. And she was one of 9 other Republicans who voted to impeach Donald Trump. So she has a tight circle of friends in that. But as far as gathering the support of regular Americans, never mind the 75 million who supported Donald Trump. They're not going to support Cheney, but her own voters won't support her for the most part either. And there's a reason for that. The reason is, why is she carrying on with this fight? You can have an opinion on whether the election was stolen by Joe Biden against Donald Trump, or whether it was won by Joe Biden honestly, and so forth. You can have the opinion, but to keep carrying this fight when honestly the fight, for the most part, the main part of the fight is over because Joe Biden is in the White House. So the fact that she wants to root out any Republicans who still think that Donald Trump rightfully won this election and that it was stolen from him seems to me a ridiculous fight to make at this point. It just doesn't seem to me the right cause to stake your political career upon. And yet that's what she's doing. She's vowing Donald Trump will never again, insofar as she has control, get near the White House. She's setting the stage to face off against him in 2024, not running for the president, but opposing any political move he might make for the White House. And in so doing, she's just alienating herself even further from voters who either support Donald Trump steadfastly or that are moderate and are learning from Joe Biden and his presidency that, hey, maybe Donald Trump and his policies weren't so bad for America after all.
Well, not to defend Cheney or anything like that. Maybe it's a little devil's advocate. Have the Republicans that are still kind of debating this issue, have they made a mistake by continuing to keep this alive, like the audit in Arizona, or Trump, talking? He's still, talking through his blog and things like this about that. Should the Republicans, not move on from this? That would remove kind of the fodder or the fuel for Cheney, I would think.
Well, I think that the problem with the election is that courts didn't hear it, right? So you had all these cases being filed and nothing was really heard in court. So it leaves that big question mark in a lot of people's minds. And there are some notable people out there that were not just tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists, but there are some smart people out there who have raised valid questions about the way the elections were run and about the ways the votes were tabulated. So I don't think that the Republican Party would lose anything by continuing to investigate the truthfulness, the integrity of this election, if they did it in a way that was forward-looking, if they did it in a way that guaranteed that what happened in the election due to supposedly the coronavirus, which opened the door for all the mail-in ballots and so forth, and vote over the course of several weeks instead of several days, that those policies get tightened up. I think Republicans will gain by looking at the election of 2020 as sort of a learning point going forward to tighten up election shenanigans in the future, for lack of a better word. Where Liz Cheney differs from that, though, is she's not looking just at election integrity or fairness of elections. She is targeting Donald Trump specifically and vowing to take him down, vowing to make him never again a factor in the Republican Party. And I think that's the difference. I think that's where she sets herself up for a lot of dislike.
Yeah, and personally, I wish that what Trump would do is actually do that forward-looking type of a thing. Is like, let's not act like Hillary Clinton or Gore and Lieberman kind of thing like that. And just think about, just argue about the election that was lost, to them, and whether or not that was done on the up and up, but look to fix the things that went wrong or the problems, and make sure it doesn't happen in the future. Because to me, there's always this part of me that just says every time that Trump brings up, the 2020 election in the sense that, I really won that or whatever, I don't see that furthers his cause at all. And I think that he would just be better off, kind of looking, saying, we've learned our lesson. We're going to do this. We're going to make sure that these fraudulent things or whatever, that we really tighten up voting and that it'll be a more honest and fair and open election going forward. I think that is much better than kind of sitting there and just kind of griping about 2020.
You may be right, but the thing is, that's what Trump does. That's what he's right. So he's not out of character here. He's not going against his personality, and he's not giving voters and American citizens a different side that hasn't already been seen. We know what Trump's like, and we know that he wasn't going to let go the election because he truly believes it was stolen. And we know that even though he got booted off social media, he came up with his own platform where he can continue that same messaging. And it works for him because it's true to who he is. And voters and, Republicans, conservatives in America, they're drawn to that about Trump. They see him as the never die fighter. He never loses, never says never steps away from a fight. But for Liz Cheney to come out and just attack him so viciously and promise that he'll never be a factor in the Republican Party again, first off, that's a demonstration of arrogance and elitism. The very reason why so many people voted for Donald Trump in the first place, to get away from that type of Republican. And second off, it's a fight that she's reaching out to grab a hold of. She didn't have to make this fight, but she is. And she's doing it in as a visible way as possible, which is sort of baffling to me because it's almost like she wants to set the stage to become the next John McCain, where, whenever Democrats want to work with a Republican, they go to the new John McCain, the new Liz Cheney.
Yeah, I mean, and with the liberal media is eating up what she's doing, and so she's a darling of the liberal media at this point. Yeah. I mean, they love that. So yeah, it is a lot. It is very McCainish, and a lot of other these guys that have kind of done that over time. Like I said, I wish that Trump would do it, but yes, this is not in Trump's character at all. So do I expect anything less? No. Right. Trump is going to be Trump, and you're right. This is what draws people to Trump, is because he is who he is, and that's what they love about him.
Yep, exactly.
All right, final topic: masks and the mandates and everything like this. So there's obviously a lot of news there because it seemed like the CDC made a very quick pivot on mask mandates, and not sure how much they were how much they were in concert there with the administration, whether or not they're exactly on the same page at the same point in time. But the media seemed to be thrown a little bit off course, and businesses weren't quite sure how to handle that. And some states that already were way ahead of the government. I'm like, so we've been trying to follow the science for all this time. I didn't realize the science was going to change in the matter of just a couple of days or whatever, that, we were hearing them saying, no, we still need to wear masks. And then all of a sudden you don't need to wear masks in most situations. What gives?
Yeah, that coronavirus is a sneaky devil, right? It's overnight, not even overnight, it's a matter of seconds. And, take the mask off. But, it's not just that we're not the only ones. The media are not the only ones who noticed the flip-flop. Senator Marsha Blackburn tweeted out, so what's changed? What science has changed to go from face masks must be worn at all times and kids in schools must wear them, to all of a sudden, well, if you've been vaccinated, take the face mask off. And the only thing that's changed is the politics. President Joe Biden had a terrible week, and I think what really hit hardest were the gas lines. You can look at what's happening in the Middle East and gasp and have your eyes wide open to the horrors that are happening there, but that's still far away. That's still distant. In America, if you're in a car with somebody who is driving and you run out of gas and you pull up to a gas station and you see the roped off pumps, and you have to keep searching for gas like I did, in Northern Virginia for several days, that's when it really hits home. And that's when you start looking at someone to blame. And of course, it falls on the White House, of course, as the blame for this. So it defied logic that these mask mandates just got taken away so quickly. And the only honest, I guess, cause for that is to look at the political atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's just, and it has been very political. I mean, when you watch the other states that had already lifted their mandates, that have been pretty open for a while, Texas, Florida, I think there's a lot going on in the Dakotas. A lot of these states have decided that, we were going to kind of chart our own path and take the risk. And the incidences of COVID have been very low. The number of deaths have been very low. They haven't seen big spikes. In Texas on opening day back in early April, the Texas Rangers, had they had 100% capacity, scared the dickens out of the media. They went into that fear mode, and nothing happened. I mean, it's been a month, and there's been no widespread. In fact, didn't Texas report the other day that they had 0 death? So it's definitely very, very political in this regard. But it'll be kind of interesting for me to see how this goes. The state, Governor Hogan lifted the mandates pretty much throughout the state of Maryland. I can't remember. I think didn't Governor Northam do something similar or close to that? But the local jurisdictions had to decide what to do, because they always gave that power. And the two slowest are Prince George's County and Montgomery County, where I live. So the initial thing was like Montgomery County was saying May 28th, we'll do this. I'm thinking, May 28th, come on, give me a break. So at least yesterday, they went ahead and said, it's okay now as long as you've been fully vaccinated. But still, if businesses want to impose a mask, requirement, you still need to obey that. But we're seeing, the big businesses, Walmart, Target, Costco, Trader Joe's, they're starting to fall in line and say, no masks are required as long as local, laws say it's okay. But I'm kind of now concerned that we're going to wind up with some people who are a little bit overzealous, and they're going to be criticizing those that are going to continue to wear masks, which I don't think is right. I mean, I don't know the health condition and in the situation with somebody that may continue to wear a mask. They may have a compromised, immune system and things like that. I had a friend of mine who posted a pictures like, he and his wife were maskless in a Walmart and on the Eastern Shore somewhere, and he was referring to others that were wearing masks as dummies. And I'm like, no, that's not the right attitude. You're a good conservative, but you should not take that attitude. You do not know why they're wearing a mask, and you now have the freedom to finally take your mask off, which was all we've been asking.
Well, I agree with you what you're saying. I think individual choice here is the characteristic that should rise to the top. And I guess the part that concerns me the most is sort of what you just said in your last statement, that we're allowed to take the masks off, and this is what we've been asking. The thing I don't like about this entire mask versus no mask debate that we've been having over a year now is that in this country, it's supposed to start with the individual rights, right? The government is there to protect those rights. And in the case of the coronavirus, the science and the health and medical bureaucrats were supposed to be there to advise and recommend and issue guidance. But somewhere along the line, that all turned into government dictates, government mandates. We had the executive orders from the White House, and this was under Donald Trump as well. We had the national emergencies declared for medical reasons. We had states issue health emergencies, and they used those declarations as justification to issue executive orders and what they called as mask mandates. But forgotten among all this mandating from government is the fact that government doesn't really have the constitutional right to mandate things like this. It still falls on individual choice. And what we've done all along before the coronavirus was when people felt sick, they stayed home. They took care of themselves. They took care of their families, their children. Now suddenly, look at what's happened over the last year. And it's become normal that government gives us the right to wear a mask or to take our masks off. The government gives us the right to travel. The government gives us the right to go back to work. These are all goalposts that have moved. And what concerns me most is that we're now at the point in this country where we're waiting for government to give us permission to do things that we don't need their permission really to do anyway. And we've kind of lost that fight. And so if you look where this could lead down the future, what happens with the next declared pandemic? What happens with the contact tracing that's still floating out there? What happens with the vaccine passports? If we've been conditioned in this country to accept that government can give us permission to remove our masks, just think how easy it's going to be for government to take that authority that they've assumed, that they've seized, and use it to justify some other mandate that really is taking a liberty from us that they have no right to steal.
Well, that's exactly. I mean, and part of this mask thing too is that you can take your mask off if you've been fully vaccinated, right? So that's another mandate to me from the government. Says we basically are mandating you get a vaccine, and then then you can take off the mask. Well, where in the Constitution does it say I have to have a vaccine? That the government can mandate that as well. So that's the problem, and I think you've made that perfectly clear too, that. We have now been conditioned into this response that the government has gone through and they said, you can't gather in a religious facility. Here's the maximum capacity for this. You've got to do this. All of these things that we were used to having, all these freedoms, our liberty, our freedom, we gave a lot of that up here during the pandemic. The problem is, as I think as you rightly pointed out, is that what happens the next time? The government will never give back totally all those things, right? Once they've had it, they're going to use that for the next time, and they will expand on it. And it's it's just going to be this long, slow thing kind of thing next time, and then there'll be a next time after that, and we will continue to see their power, their reach, in further and further into our life and our freedom and our liberty. This is not something that I want to see, and I don't think that you want to see either.
No, definitely not. And, just for a quick example of where it's happened before, think of healthcare. Think when Hillary Clinton brought up Hillary Care and how she was laughed at because government-run healthcare. Healthcare was not a right back then. And then Barack Obama successfully pushed it through. Now we even have Republicans talking about healthcare as a right, forgetting that the phrase actually is taxpayer-funded healthcare, whether that's a right or not. But that's lost. And so that goalpost has been moved. The same thing is happening now with the coronavirus, and we need to be aware of the phrases and the language that the left uses and fight back early on before these become accepted principles in our minds.
Right. And I think a lot of people think that, when these things happen, it's not that hard to say, repeal a law. I mean, there's been a big fight talking about repealing Obamacare and things like that. The thing is look, once those things that have got all these kind of fair type of benefits and what they're in there, and they're kind of codified into law. It's good luck on trying to ever get that eliminated and reverse back to where you were at square one. It's just one of those things. We're just going to get more and more of that, not less, unfortunately.
Right. Yep.
All right. Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I want you to make that.
I was just going to add in real quick. Especially as the younger generation is being taught in this, government is out to watch you. Way to go.
Yeah, and that's all they know. That's all they're going to know at the beginning, too, right? I mean, that's yet another issue. There's so many things to talk about. All right. Well, thank you, Cheryl, for joining me today. I appreciate it. Appreciate your insight and everything.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you, everyone out there. Please continue to support Cheryl in the Washington Times and her Bold and Blunt podcast and all the wonderful things that Cheryl in the Washington Times continue to do to fight for us every day. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again next week.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.